Hi, this is George Lees in Scotland, Kelso again, where he still had no confirmation of his news on the Trident nuclear weapon scandal. I want to tell you about the people in the Wealth Divide project, and I want to tell you particularly about the royals. I get messages in the morning from my friends in the skies, in my dreams, that tell me that I must focus on the very top of the profiteering trees. So I've taken you here. Okay, I'm going to explain to you how almost all of the world is owned by these families. That's Prince Philip, HRH the Queen. That's the Dutch royals, recently abdicated with the sticks, passed it on to their kids. That's the ex-First Lady in America with her third partner, Templesman, at De Beers. Royal Dutch Shell, all the big banking groups, all the big Rio Tinto mining groups are all stitched up. They're in Her Ladyship's thrall. Gordon Bowden, when he fell out with me, would not allow me to dissect the Queen's director details. I'm still very frustrated by that, but he's led me to believe that she is in charge of most of the massive mining interests, which include Rio Tinto and some of the other Australasian giants. And when you look at the organisations that they have created to make sure that the sovereignty of their nations are dismembered. Prince Philip entered the royal household in Britain. He came across in a orange box from his birthplace in Greece, and he had a tenner in his pocket when he came into the country to meet the Queen, and he was given the recommendation that he was a suitable boyfriend and an heir to the throne, or a marital infiltrator of the throne, by Lord Mountbatten, who he later had killed. It is just amazing. They run all of the world's scams. As you'll see later on, they run the war dead industry, they run the World Wildlife Fund. That is massive. It allows them to engage in massive land grabs. They've got huge oil interests all around the globe, and they're involved with Shell, Unilever, Lonrho, and all of those tie them into their German relatives. That's Feuerhop, who's the boss at Lonrho in Africa, and their crimes are sensational. They're murderous in the pay round. They kill the blacks with no negotiation with automatic weapons. And we'll tell you a little bit about Prince Charles's advisors in the financial services sector, who run girls' schools and are linked into the religious fraud, which is 2,000 years old, and these bastards entirely understand it. There's Joseph Ratzinger, the last pope, who is now in an elite park hotel on the outskirts of Rome in a place called Alba, and that is his retirement home from the Vatican when the heat was on and they were all being exposed as massive profiteers. This is where some of the funders reside, and some of these massive cabals. You're seeing UNESCO, IUCN, UNEP, World Resource Institute, Sierra Club, the 1001 Club. That's an elite club that's even more elite than the Davos groupings. And you've got all the ecological scams that are just profiteering vents. And in the last fortnight we have launched the Ebola scandal, and the Catholic Church today have an organised funding mechanism to fund a false news campaign that is entirely for profit. That was the Catholic Church. None of the other two denominations I went to today pay any attention to Ebola. They're less sophisticated in their linkages to these people than the Catholics are. You'll see a lot about that when we talk about the diasporas later on or in separate videos. Okay, NCI Pakistan, partitioned out of Linlithgow in Scotland. There's the Lockerbie plane, there's the De Beers label that was the cover-up for his involvement and his eventual killing. Yeah, and there also is the leading pacifist in the UN, Brent Carlson, was on that plane when it was brought down. The whole of the news that is released about everything they do is absolutely fictitious, and it allows them to do globalized criminality all of the time. And this is the work of a chap called Lyndon B. LaRouche, who's an American, who realizes that America does not own to anybody, does not belong to anybody in America. The sovereignty of every nation state in the world is threatened by these people. Okay, let's just keep it to the pictures. As you can see, all of it is documented, all of it is referenced. I'm going to take you to the war crimes frauds now. As I described to Jim Fetzer a few days ago, the war crimes are relentlessly laughed at by these bastards. Yeah, so this man runs the Poppy Fund for 2 or 3 decades before the investigative journalists get onto him, and the Poppy Fund is part of the religious joke. Nero's mistress, later his wife, was called Poppia. I've explained that to Jim Fetzer. He nearly choked on his glass of water as we made the interview. Yeah, George Herbert Bush, his nickname is George Poppy Bush. It goes all the way back to tyranny and the writing of the New Testament in the Roman court. Yeah, and the writers of the New Testament become Roman emperors and their wives, and other emperors come in and shag them when they're missing somebody in the bloodline to keep the power base. They write the New Testament, and all of these people in the courts, in the monarchies all across Europe at that time, realize entirely that Christianity is a fraud, and all of the messianic religions are frauds to create strife, religious martyrdom, and war and insurrection all over the world. So there's Pakistan, and there's some of Lyndon B. LaRouche's global maps about the territory that they have claimed. So when you see the World Wildlife Fund claiming that some buffalo are being hit on in Africa, and then you see the deployment of the mercenary armies using Tim Fickin Spicer, who's a director at Trident 3 and Trident 4. He's the mercenary army leader that trains his soldiers on the borders of these vast countries in this massive but underprivileged continent. The black people never get a chance, except those that are picked for the leadership team, like Obama and the Jekyll and Hyde characters I told you about in an earlier video, when they abolished slavery but remunerated all of the impoverished slave owners for their loss of income. It's a bit like the Leveson inquiry. The land grabs are much worse. Everywhere is stitched up by bastards like Prince Philip, who's never done a day's work in his life, but he has done all sorts of evil things in other people's bedrooms or in prostitution dens. And all of it leads to false news diversions like these. But now, instead of the elderly kings and queens being in front of the camera with the dead species or the massive tiger in India, within a couple of years of the Queen's coronation, they now put the kids in the limelight and they defame them instead, because the whole world is beginning to understand that that generation were entirely criminal. Okay, and that is confirmation that that man there, King Juan Carlos, who had one child with Princess Diana, all of that is exposed in Greg Hallett's interviews. You can see that the conspiracy theory that Gordon Bowden accused me of when we were making an interview, it's in the headlines in English papers at the time. Spanish king's grandson 13 shoots himself in foot in tragic reminder of the day 56 years ago that Juan Carlos shot dead his own brother. That's why Juan Carlos is the king. The other brother is forgotten about and is now a conspiracy theory, like the owners of the tribal lands that they have entirely taken over. It is a scandal that I'm accused of bad behaviours, but Tim Spicer is on the board of the Trident Nuclear Deterrent Company, and he is using legendary laundering tools to strip everything out of our country that our country could own and should have in the treasury. None of these people get a life. Vast tracts of land taken over by the corporate gangs that we've talked about, Clutter's Whiters, and led by Nancy McKinstry and the massive law firms. It shows you here that they're doing it in Africa, the fall of the House of Windsor, totalitarian government, and treason across the G8. All of those links take you into explicit articles on who's doing what in other people's countries. And you can see Obama there. You can see the missing president who was elected in Egypt, but because he's in the Islamic Brotherhood, he's been disappeared. And there's Miss Lagarde, who launders the money out and into Washington, and tucks it into private accounts in Switzerland, which we'll touch on later on as we come to Prince Charles's involvement and his financial advisor. Senegal is the home of Obama. Obama's real name is Suetoro, which is in the Christian Bible. All of it is a sick joke. Barack is also in the Christian Bible. And there you see a couple of the massive profiteers. That's Carney with King, Mervyn King, the former boss at the Bank of England. And there you see the abdicated king with Richard Nixon. We'll get to Nixon in a few videos time. He is a massive criminal on other people's continents as well. He works with genocidal leaders and with mafia gangsters concurrently, and the victims of their crimes are the troops that fight for their country. That's their country. American troops are dismembered by opiate addiction in the Golden Triangle. They're there entirely to aid the French production units in Marseille to take over the world's narcotic trading from Prince Philip and the triumvirate. Prince Philip did sire Prince Charles and Princess Anne. The other kids are sired by the triumvirate: Lord Porchester, Lord Plunkett, and I forget the name of the third person in the triumvirate. They are given the drug running capacity as profiteers in the south of England in vast estates that they own, and all of it is right at the head of global society. There you see diplomats, world leaders like Baroness Ashton, who could not find him when she went as part of the UN delegation to Egypt. Egypt is still owned by the tank commander Mubarak, and I'm quite stunned that one of my favourite pop stars, who's called Shakira, she started writing her own music when she was aged 4, a bit like Mozart in the movies, and she is, I'm led to believe on Wikipedia, a Mubarak. I do not know if she's in the same bloodline as the tank commander, but the tank commander in Egypt gets 1 billion USAID a year to keep the citizens impoverished and in fear, and many of them are now in shallow graves. He gets let off all the time in inquests that are staged, and he arrives there in an elite helicopter, and he lives in a safe house. More about that later on. All of the world leaders are in the thrall of these people. That's Chavez, the socialist. I've given you a profiling of the world's socialists. All of them are paid to desert their nation, and she is particularly vicious. That is Quentin Bryce, the Governor General in Australia, who's more powerful than the previous female Prime Minister and the current Prime Ministers. I forget the names of them, but both of them are largely just puppets to the American leadership teams. The lady who was the Prime Minister in the previous regime was absolutely in the thrall of Obama. You've got thousands of American troops policing Latin America, where Shakira comes from, and she's a millionaire in the pop musician sector, and some of her videos are about locations like the place where Hitler escaped to in Spain, Montserrat. She makes videos in the churches, the Christian churches. You know, all of these people know about the Christianity fraud. She makes her videos and dances around in Montserrat, where Hitler was a gardener at the Abbey in his retirement years, before Winston Churchill had him killed. So that's Quentin Bryce, who laughs at the Anzac War dead, and explained to me who Mr. Bean was. Within 6 weeks of me revealing that Mr. Bean was the war correspondent for Gallipoli, she had bailed out of her office. And do you get the GG joke? The horse is an icon for the elites since the Pisos invented Christianity, and that is the GG joke. Yeah, a GG is a horse or a pony. Jesus is a donkey in their popular culture, because he never existed, and all of the characters in the Bible were written by the Pisos, and that is the term taking the piss. All of these people are doing that right under your noses, and you can see it, that he's a lumberjack and he's doing okay. Okay, there's Mrs. Thatcher with Pinochet. There's the land grabs in Shakira's country. Yeah, and there we've got where the new Pope came from, where the Caravan of Death and Operation Condor genocides. There are thousands of American troops there, and there are thousands of American Navy personnel in the South Pacific, but also in the Black Sea region, making sure that nothing can destroy the G8 stranglehold on Russia, all of those territories in the Balkans that they've already brutalized in the last decade or so, just 15 years, massive genocides, all of the things that happen on the boundaries of these countries, and the Mexican slaughter of people that are fleeing from Latin America, where the US troops are numbered. They get culled with automatic weapons as they cross the American border, and folk singers sing about people being killed in crashed planes as they cross that bloody border. I forget the name of the singer, in the Woody Guthrie era and slightly beyond that, that sing about the tragedies of all those migrants being holed up in Christian churches, which suddenly are set fire to by socialists and by people in the papacy now who were anti-communist fighters. In other words, they got a general like him to cull the ordinary working people, and often that would happen in the church building. It's a really good way of making sure that you're allowed to laugh at the Christianity joke, and you get rid of the poor people that fill the collection plate on behalf of saving their souls. And he was allowed to retire to leafy London by her, who was a criminal in Finchley. And also in those cabals that were led by Lonro. So this is now Prince Charles's financial domain. He gets massive salaries, he's got immunity from talking to the press, and his advisor is the CEO or the chairman at Lonro, Christopher Michael Chambers. Michael is the Jewish angel, Christopher is a joke about Christ. Yeah, when you understand it, and you understand the nomenclature, and you understand the icons like T for the cross, you can dissect it all, and you can have a laugh at it all, like these bastards have done for 2,000 years. Let me read Christopher Chambers' profiles. He's recreationally interested in skiing and shooting. He shoots the pheasants, and he skis in the Davos region. Here's his profile. Director, BZW Securities until 1997, Desert and Bevan Limited until 1997, Head European Equity Capital Markets, Credit Suisse First Boston Europe Limited until 2002, CEO Man Investments 2002 to 2005, Man Group PLC 2003 to 2005, Policy Advisor to HRH the Prince of Wales Charities Office 2005 to 8, Chairman Jelmoli Holdings AG Zurich 2007 to 10, when he began to get some pressure placed on him, like all of these batards, by people that are not given any salary at all because they're so insightful into why the whole world is busted for cash by these villains. That's me, by the way. Chairman Helvetic Consultancy Limited 2012 to currently, Executive Chairman Lonro Limited 2013 to current, Non-Executive Director Swiss Prime Site AG Zurich 2009 to the present day, Evolution Group PLC 2009 to 12, Pendragon. Do you remember it? Pendragon is the man that was planted in the King Arthur story that was written as a piss take by the popes in Rome. Are you beginning to see the magnitude of the world's frauds that embroil you every Sunday and lead to your impoverishment and allow him never to do a stroke of work in his whole life? He has got some mitigating circumstances, and I will mention them before we close the video. I would not have his life for any money. He's persecuted as a child, he's homosexually raped by his relatives, and all of his life is a lie. But it is not something that is I'd envy a lot. It must be terrible being a royal and being in the thrall of the ruthless moneylenders that run the world. That's why his first wife is in the grave at Frogmore with Mrs. Simpson, in the grave at Frogmore. One was good, one was an American fascist. Right, so we got to Lonro, Swiss Prime Site AG Zurich 2009 to the present, Evolution Group PLC 2009, Pendragon PLC 2013 to the present. So that's the King Arthur joke about the advisor to our current next in line for, or maybe he's not next in line for the monarchy since they changed the rules of succession. I'm a little bit confused with that. Supervisory Board, GE Money. That's GE is Warren Buffett's company, and they took a huge chunk of Tesco's into America when they did a pump and dump, and the Tesco CEO bailed out after giving Warren Buffett, one of the richest men on the globe, the insider information to get that illicit deal done. Berenberg Bank AG Switzerland 2012. GE also do pharmaceuticals. SR Advisor Real Estate Lone Star Europe 2011. Governor Kensington Prep School 2012 to 13. Now, do you think that they understand deeply the religious fraud? Or do you think that it's just an accident that they might have named some of their companies after the need to have the time shift? Dalek is listed on there. There's the frickin' Dalek. They're having a laugh. The Dalek Group, Israel's dominant integrated energy company. There's their oil wells off the shore of Palestine, which they had to partition from Linlithgow so that the British Israeli connections can thrive and everybody can get irritated about how Palestine and Palestinians never get a life. That's why the Dalek is beaded, because that is the Bank of International Settlements in Basel. Or it could be Kylie's abdomen in the little skirt. She looks lovely in it. She looks really, really hot. But within a few weeks of that video that she made in that dress, making the T signs and the swastika signs as she dances around in a lewd way, very soon she has a breast removed for that. And all of it is beginning to clang home into the heads of the people. When he came to Scotland, His Royal Highness, he read the forecast. We were under a monsoon for the whole of his visit to the vast estates that he has up there. Okay, they've got the land grabs and all of the mineral rights, and the house that you own is on their territory. If there's oil under that on your little estate in your rural location or your suburb of one of the cities, and you strike oil when you put your spade in the ground, it belongs to him or his mum. And she is actually his mum, which is very rare in the monarchy that we're describing here. They had their first child together when she was 18. He's in Australia like Rio Tinto. And I believe that they understand deeply the religious joke, because the school that Christopher Chambers runs is the KP school, the Calpurnius Piso school in London. Could be the Kevin Peterson school or the Katy Perry school, all picked for New World Order fame by the world owners who run it around and give him massive pay deals, as we'll see further down. There's the Pendragon PLC 10-year share price. Yet they've done the dirty on the shareholders. They've crashed it, they've pumped it, and they've dumped it. That's how they make all of their money, by the insider trading, like the selling off of Tesco's to Warren Buffett. And they give this guy a knighthood. They are frequently pictured with him. She's Mrs. Thatcher's pick. At the 4th attempt he gets the knighthood. And when they begin to make statements about their reluctance to talk to the press in Britain, and he gets massive pay rises, I think they will be mentioned further down, the Cornish fucking estates are under tons and tons of water. Yeah, and she is the Duchess of Cornwall. There's the Cornwall labels, and there are all of the cuts in Gloucestershire's public services. Everyone has had their pay frozen in the public services for 7 years back to back. He gets millions and millions to sit around on aeroplanes and to have a good time with Camilla, his childhood lover, and she was still his lover through the whole of Diana's period in power and in stress before she got what she got in the Lalma tunnel, which means the apple, and is a reflection of their attempt to make it look like a woman's original sin. Okay, so he imposes austerity on all British citizens, everybody that works in the NHS, everybody that works in the schools, in the universities, except for the leadership team. They're in league with him. Christopher Chambers, HRH's personal financial advisor. Prince Charles gets, and this is the news I believe in 2012 or thereabouts, they are much less amiable about publishing the news now that we know all about their role in the wars, the terror events, and with socialists like him and with husbands like him. Yeah. 700,000 pay rise. I believe that it was reported in the papers as several million, and that makes his net earnings for the Duchy of Cornwall alone. They've got hundreds of estates around the place. 19 million a year for that one. Okay? The High Court upholds the ban on publishing Prince Charles' letters to ministers. I wonder why. Yeah, and there they are, grieving at their mum and their wife's funeral. Yeah. So, there is no doubt that they understand the religious joke. That's the British American tobacco symbol, that they are in the warmongering teams with these bastards. Fleming, all of the manipulators, all of the politicians. Winston Churchill sired his mum by artificial insemination. Okay? And all of the jokes that they share, including the KP joke, Kenyan products is the same as Calpurnius Piso, and every time that the Piso name is used they have to cover it up. Tonight I had pesto and spaghetti for my tea. Everything that you look at in the supermarkets, including the M&M sweeties, the jokes are explained. All of the elites know it. This is one about the bridal bedroom on the first night, and all about Cummings and the flowery face, blushing red, and the puppy word. If they can get that in without you noticing that they are profiteering from the wars that they run relentlessly, there never is a break in warfare, there never is a break in them shagging other people's women and planting the wrong people into the monarchy, because it puts them in a very preciously fragile condition, and they dare not rise up then against the moneylenders. I'm prepared to help Prince Charles end all of this year, but he needs to come clean on the jokes that he shares with his elite friends that include the Axis countries in World War II, and everything is done entirely to keep the numbers down. Now everything is so chaotic that we're on the verge of societal collapse. Every country in the world is in a sovereign debt pool, and all of this explains Greg Hallett's work on exposing these people as the drug runners. That's Mountbatten. He gets to abuse Prince Charles as a child, and he when he's got a couple of drinks in him is ruthless in the bedroom or on the streets of the prostitution dens, and his wife, the Queen, kicked him out of the bedroom after they had toured Australasia in the second year of their marriage. But that was time enough to make him a legitimate claimant to the throne. But I'm not sure whether or not he is now a legitimate claimant to the throne, since Cameron and HRH changed the laws of succession and she also, that's the young prince's I think she's Princess Sophie. She gets the prima nocte things that the Scottish women got from the feudal landlords in the Braveheart film. Okay, and there's Kate, commoner Kate, in the prostitution dens where she met the now, I think Prince William is the heir. Harry is the one that was sired by that red-headed chap there. There's Harry, there's the red-headed father. And it is unbelievably corrupted. Okay, so what I want to show you now is this, that the whole of the World War and the whole of the religious fraud is entirely understood by these people. This is one of the books that Greg Hallett has published, and you can get, if you find this on the website, on my website, you should be able to click on those links and find out the details of the World War II fraud. Adolf Hitler, the incestuous Catholic Jew, we've explained how he's related to the Rothschilds, we've explained how he was educated in geopolitical manipulation and fascism in Tavistock in Britain. Greg Hallett has explained his sexuality and the bizarre things that he does, like shitting on his partner in the bedroom. I don't know how much of that is true, but when you see the reaction of the news media to the news trickling out, then they panic in a major way. Hitler's psychiatric condition, yet supposedly unhinged, and that means that he can do anything to disrupt the cause of Germany. And when you see him beginning to kill his leadership team in the last year of the war, you know that this is entirely in league with FDR and Stalin, who was also trained in England. Body doubles, Hess and Hess fly to Britain. So that Hess flew to Britain, but it was not actually Rudolf Hess, it was one of the body doubles. So he was incarcerated for the rest of his life, and the story was that he flew to Britain to meet the Hamilton dynasty in Scotland and to try and end the war. So it's a nice romantic narrative that the elite teams are trying to end the war, but Hess never came to Britain. It's the body double that came to Britain. And when you see what happened in the bunker in Berlin, then the whole thing becomes a massive scandal. Crashing the Duke of Kent, I'm not sure what that was about. You've got the Dunkirk thing, which I've explained in the video early on, about fleeing back to Dunkirk, and then Dad's army and the massive stockholders at the HSBC in those massive financial frauds. That is the Mainwaring character that I talked about in an earlier video. Everybody in the Dad's army joke, when we were defending Britain using only voluntary servicemen who were pensioners and are just a BBC comedy, like the Blackadder people laughing at the culling of every war for thousands of years. They went back into uniforms and they went back into the Pendragon era, and they laugh at everything that happens to the war dead, like Quentin Bryce used to do. Then you get the James Bond stuff, Operation Winnie the Pooh, Pearl Harbor, and the explanations from Greg Hallett on why that was sparked, how it was done. If you read Andrew Carrington Hitchcock and my website, you'll find out how World War I was extended by vicious years by creating ethnic hatred, which the politicians are doing again in 2014 because of these massive disclosures. Dieppe, Anthony Blunt, I mentioned the Blunt, I think he's the nephew of Anthony Blunt, and this is the homosexual that Greg Hallett referred to in some of the videos. He runs the double agent system, and at that time Mossad were only getting started, and Henry Kissinger was just a German but working for both sides already. And then you've got Wallace Simpson and the King Edward VIII scandal. Wallace Simpson, they fled to the candy slush in Austria, and that becomes the candy floss joke. And that is where her divorce news came through, and the Nazis came to their wedding, and they shake hands with Nixon, the genocidal leader in the Vietnamese campaign and the Korean campaign, once he's been convicted for electoral misbehaviours. No convictions, just a finger wagging, and he's allowed to liaise with these bastards all over again. Operation James Bond, Operation Winnie the Pooh. James Bond is a massive profiteer. I'll try and find some director numbers for him and his companies in a few minutes. And then you've got the lost leaders, Churchill, Hitler, Stalin work together. So the stories that occur later on in Hallett's books are about the flight from Germany. Eva Braun and our body doubles were all dressed in little blue dresses, and that is a joke now in the fashion industry. And when I revealed that to the world, the news people again panic, and they, you know, everything that confirms the truth of these stories is covered up by the media relentlessly. And let me just take you back to a page and see if we can find some of that story about the escape in the Beatles' Yellow Submarine song through Lake Mugglesea into Barcelona, and then out across the Canary Islands and into Latin America. So Prince Charles and Camilla and the Daleks are needed because of the fictitious birth of Jesus in the year 0. Jesus was actually launched into the New Testament 80 years later, so we need a Dalek and a time shift thing that is invented by the spy called Eric Maswich, head of BBC Light Entertainment, but a censor for correspondence from the trenches in World War I. That's as ruthless as it gets. Yeah. Then when you see the programmes that BBC Light Entertainment make about Andy Pandy and Teddy Roosevelt chucking his toys out of the pram, and all of them being in striped suits like the internment camp where the Jews were lined up and then put in the fire pans and the ovens, and that's the end of their lives. That's the Jews and the innocent, poor bystanders in every country that was affected by that. Okay? And so, that was the allegiance to the royal. Let's see what we've got on World Wars, the elite joke. Oh, there's Quentin Bryce. Just listen to the tone of her voice, the little bitch. She's resigned. She's more powerful when she's in office than the Prime Minister.
My friends, good morning from our Anzac Memorial in Hyde Park, Sydney. A special place, like every war memorial to Australians across the world. It is almost unnaturally quiet, serene, even though...
So that's enough. She gets a massive salary to be undiplomatic and laugh about the war dead. This is what they are laughing at when Mr. Bean, the actor, opens the London Olympics. It's a joke.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Sir Simon Rattle. Tonight, as a tribute to the British film industry, he is conducting the London Symphony Orchestra in a performance of Chariots of Fire.
Do they understand the religious joke? Yes, they fucking do. Chariots of Fire, a film about an athlete who refused to run for his country on a Sunday and then was killed in uniform on a distant continent. I believe it was in China. Then you get this, and it's really fucking serious, because this brings in the university leaders and all of the sickness in their jokes.
How are you feeling now? not all that good, like I rather hoped I'd get through the whole show. Go back to work at Pratt & Sons. Keep wicket for the Croydon gentleman. Harry Dorrit. Made a note in my diary on the way here. Simply says, "Fuck." What? Said boom. Look at your stick, Lieutenant.
Well, no, sir. Wouldn't want to face a machine gun without this.
Listen. Our guns have stopped.
You don't think...
Maybe the war's over. Maybe it's peace.
Oh, hurrah! The big knobs have got round the table and yanked the iron out of the fire.
Thank God. We lived through it. The Great War, 1914 to 1970.
Hooray!
I'm afraid not. The guns have stopped because we're about to attack. Not even our generals are mad enough to show their own men. They think it's far more sporting than the Germans do.
So we are, in fact, going over.
I'm afraid so. Unless I can think of something very quickly.
Company! One! Wait! Forward!
Oh, there's a nasty splinter on that ladder, sir. A bloke could hurt himself on that.
Stand! Ready!
I have a plan, sir.
Ready for it? A cunning and subtle one?
Yes, sir.
As cunning as a fox who's just been appointed Professor of Cunning at Oxford University.
Yes, sir.
On the signal! Company will advance!
Well, I'm afraid it'll have to wait. Whatever it was, I'm sure it was better than my plan to get out of this by pretending to be mad. And who would have noticed another madman around here? Good luck, everyone.
Isn't that funny? Then the little bastard gets behind the organ at the Olympics as the Queen and the Bond heroes come flying out the parachute. Let me show you what the Bond heroes actually do in peacetime. What they do in peacetime is to reside in the tax havens as millionaires, and they manipulate other people's countries from the tax havens and the massive contracts from the corrupted government in the UK. I don't think we've got time to show you that, otherwise I'm going to lose the batteries. Let's just see him pressing on the key, and then it confirms that he's a cheat. He cheats in the race in the chariot. Here we go. He's got the hanky up to his nose later on. All of the iconic symbols of all of the fascist bastards in all of the wars since the Christianity fraud was invented. No interruption. These people now get the Peace Prize. Henry Kissinger got the Peace Prize. Obama got the Peace Prize. I'm going to have to stop it because it makes me sick. I don't know whether or not we can get any lower than that. Oh yeah, we can. There's the actual boss at Oxford University, and that is what he has done since he became a leader of men and came back from Hong Kong. In 1995 there was no student debt. You got your education entirely free. He's also a thief and a criminal at Lonro with Christopher Chambers. He's in the ITU, or in a coffin, since May the 17th of this year. They have not got the courage to reveal what's happened to him. He looks a bit piggy-like when you show just the nostrils, doesn't he? He's the boss at the BBC. All of the scandals beyond the grave are exposed, but none of the crimes against their children are let out. Okay, so I think I'm going to stop making this video now, and that takes you to the Sound of Silence videos, and for copyright reasons I'm not allowed to play that anymore. But there's the Zapruder film, and there's the man with the handkerchief, a Poirot lookalike. They love to have a laugh, and this is in the halls of state where Kennedy's body was placed. This is his killing, the man who made that movie was in exactly the right place at exactly the right time, and he got a vast amount of money to show the killing of the world's most decent ever politician that led to the world's biggest ever winter storms and the biggest lightning storm that I've ever seen in my life. And there de Gaulle is in these pictures, and the de Gaulle story I'm going to tell in a video very, very soon, because the French are as sly as any other nation on the globe. They are free France. They don't get heavily involved in the conflict. They let the people sit around on the Dunkirk coast, and then they host the 75-year celebrations. Only the elites and the quislings get invited. All of them are in the state dress. All of them have those massive pay rises and those massive estates. None of them ever are in the battle zone. It's only your children. Okay, and there's the active service. There's a picture of the Cornish estates. There's Crackshot Harry. Because of their illegitimacy, they are now in a state of panic. When we revealed the Audi illegitimacy again, and Hallett was letting his news out, they have massive floods in Windsor, all up and down the Thames Valley. The Cornish estates are underwater, and when that happens, the little shits are desperately keen to take the attention onto minor issues like the killing of rare species. That's on the front page of a British newspaper. Remember, these are the people that profit. Camilla's brother was a man called Mark Shand, and this is really funny. I did not laugh about it a few months ago because he died relatively recently, and I gave him a few respectful months, but he's a director at many of these massive land grab charities. He's on the board at JP Morgan. He's on the board at the World Wildlife Fund, and the British subsidiary of the World Wildlife Fund is actually the owner of the World Wildlife Fund globally. Yeah, the international vent is smaller in terms of criminality and sums at the bank than the Brits get. Okay, Mark Shand was killed in an elite hotel revolving door. That's a trickle-down joke from God. Yeah, the revolving door between commerce and politics. Commerce, warmongering and profiteering, and the pretense that these people care about the wildlife. They only care about the land grabs and creating chaos in every one of those countries. They never share with them what we've had for hundreds of years already, and that even goes to the level of a decent reservoir so they can have quality drinking water that the Cornish estates get in massive amounts because of the duplicity of these teams. It's actually treason. There's what you were allowed to write home. I've shown you that in the earlier video. It's a tick box, and it's a stitch up and a joke, just like the Blackadder movie you've just seen. Okay, shall we have another look at one more place? I can refer you to some future reading if you want. That page is very important. On my website you must look at drugs, booze and vice, the fascist links and the French connection. Most of the conflicts we've had since World War II have been about diamond assets, gold, oil, or some rare mineral that is vitally important in world trading, and that's why often the focus is on narcotics. The Vietnamese campaign, all of the brutalization of Burma by the Brits, and Aung San Suu Kyi's dad, that's the tank commander in Burma when Mrs. Thatcher's husband Dennis was the director at Burma Oil. They dismember their troops by addiction, and they dismember them also by the launch of HIV into the prostitution dens there that kills the indigenous people all across Africa all across the Golden Triangle, and all of them in the power base and the Parliament buildings think that is hilarious. I'm just going to take you there and show you that Nixon is just as criminal as all of the rest of him. The Watergate film is a tiny joke about his career in theft and genocide, in league with the French villains like Foccart, Pompidou and de Gaulle. Yeah, it's called the Great Heroin Coup. I don't have time to take you down and show you all the characters in it. It involves the production labs in Marseille. In the Godfather movie, it's portrayed as if the drugs come out of Sicily, but in actual fact the best chemistry labs on the globe are in Marseille in France. The names here in all of this story, this book has been censored since 1980. It is so potent because it reveals the huge crimes of America's leaders and France's leaders, that include genocide on returning troops in the name of the anti-communist movement. Okay, so look on Professor George Lee's Revelations for Drugs, Booze and Vice, the Fascist Links and the French Connection, and you'll find The Great Heroin Coup by Henrik Kruger. Let me see if we'll get any time to run down to the pictures at the bottom and to show you some of the household names that are involved. It is tragic. That's a joke about a musician in Barcelona in Spain, where the Nazis were laundered before they then went to the Canaries and out into fascist Latin America. It's Evanescence by Maya Mortal. It's lovely music. They've got the little bandages that the baby Jesus had on in the crib, and they've got the fire pans and the grids that are celebrated even in the era of St. Lawrence of Rome, who was burnt to death on a fire pan. And they make jokes about that. That is in the Old Testament, about the fire pan, about shaving the heads. All of it makes you reminiscent of Dresden, that I made all of you aware of in the earlier videos. But I forgot to mention that Dresden was one of the epicenters for the art treasures of Europe, and that is why they have rebuilt it, and they have now declared it to be one of the heritage cities. It was one of the biggest culls in global warfare history, and the bodies were burnt to a crisp on grids like that. Okay, so let's get to the bottom and see what happened. It's all about pan-continental control of the narcotics industry, the French intelligence zoo. So that brings in junta leaders like, it brings in people like Jacques Foccart, who were under the thrall of de Gaulle, but they had bureaus and they had documents on all of the coercible politicians in every political party in France, like they now have on every political party in every country in the globe. That's the Rothschilds. Yeah, Foccart is particularly ruthless in places like Algeria. The Elf oil company in Africa, all of it is cheating, killing, murdering, and when they mention the Villa Papyri, yeah, and the secret organisations that are the spying agencies for France, when the returning troops in the war went back to the Free French headquarters in the no bombing zone that I talked about in the elite universities yesterday in the Buckinghamshire region, then they got killed by the exiled bastards that run the transitional government from the leafy bomb-free zone. Because they're loyalists, they put a bullet in their head and they put them in shallow graves under the buildings. The book describes how many of those graves there were. It was absolutely censored in 1980 because of those massive crimes against the loyalists. And if we have time, you'll see that when the troops returned to France and to Italy, they were culled by Lucky Luciano. There's the Villa Andrea. That is the story I told you about when the Villa Andrea was used by the spies, and it was used to torture people, and they were killed in that place. And all of the elites in the BBC and the news media and even the ITV networks run by Michael Grade understand that. That's why Bruce Forsyth resigned when I exposed this trivial stuff. And the names of people that are involved in it they are introduced into Hollywood movies about other issues, but notably the one about Grand Prix, and that the man Sarti is the French hero in that case. This is about French murderers and genocidal leaders, and they got politicians thrown in for good measure. And they had recently an election in Algeria, and several of the representatives in the election are now based and live in Paris. That's how twisted it has become. None of the countries in Africa belong to Africans. None of the countries in Shakira's South America belong to South Americans. The Americans are all over Europe. The Americans were all over Japan when the tsunami hit it. If something like that sparks a riot, it could become a revolution, because the people are impoverished globally, but the bastards that get funded by USAID are heavily armed and are a death threat to the entire nation. There's the Focart name again. Let's just see if we can get some pictures at the bottom. It's a very intense book. I just read the summary version of it, and if you read the summary that I've relayed there, it will take you less than an hour and a half. There's the heroin, the pure white heroin out of Marseille. Remember, I'm a professor of pharmacology, and the chemists in France are really, really gifted. Up to 1978, only the French labs could deliver the ultra pure snow white product image below. And then you've got the pursuit of them and the allegiance of other countries. Nixon looking a little bit sly there with one eye shut. And you've got that, I think, is Pompidou. He was also under Focart's thrall. And the people that went across into Latin America, like Sarti, are all mentioned here. The gangsters are untouchable, but yet there is no certainty in any of these networks. The distrust and the ruthlessness is amazing. So Helen Hirsch, remember that name that's used in Schindler's List, and you've got a whole host of names: Jackie Martin, Lorenz, Moulin, Demester, Russell, De Salle, Keller, Andriani, but those ones are not the ones. And then you've got issues involving Haiti, and then the laboratories being shifted into the Americas themselves, and then the headquarters and the laundering vents coming up into Mexico and up into Miami, where we get into the territory that was covered by the Godfather film, and the killing of the body double. So there's Sarti, the drug runner and the murderer that became the hero in the Grand Prix movie. And the Villa Andrea is so important to Bruce Forsyth that his assistant and he resigned from their light entertainment roles when the Villa Andrea was revived by a modern day journalist who gets paid no money at all to reveal why the world is in such an unstable state. Okay, liquidation, death, genocides all over Latin America on the web pages on fascism below. Okay, Marseille, iron colour. A lot of the people in the French operation were being hit on by this time, and the big change that got America the power base eventually was the imposition or the insertion of Henry Kissinger into Nixon's team. Henry Kissinger is a ruthless bastard, the world's biggest ever killer. No one can compete with him. He's a Mossad man, he's a German, an indigenous German. He's the highest ranking Mossad agent in the US. And you've got the massive pogroms, you've got all the jokes in Vietnam, the Home Alone joke, the Home Alone movies, 5 of them have been made. That's a laugh about the Hmong people who were paid to desert their country and to become double agents and spies in league with the CIA and Kissinger's teams. And what they did was to desert their nation. That's the Home Alone movies. Hmong people. It's as trivial as that, but millions die because of it. And when you see the pictures that we've got of Vietnam that link into the religious fraud and the genocides and the defoliation campaigns, then it makes you absolutely physically sick. See the star. You remember the star man that ate the hamster on the front page of Rupert Murdoch's Sun? Everything is a desperate cover-up. We're mentioning Bangkok there now, the prostitution dens. The cocaine was made in Coca-Cola plants in Vietnam when the war was still being conducted. Pepsi Cola, Coca-Cola. It's as sick as the Prince Philip joke about the Philips light tubes and the Dutch monarchies being involved, along with their electricity companies, in laundering that time into the South Pacific on behalf of the triumvirate and the people that sired the Queen's babies for real. That's a balance sheet on the money that they've got to earn. Everything. NATO's armies swept into Afghanistan and Iraq for partially for control of their narcotics wealth, but mainly for control of the issuance of money. Okay? And then you get involved in massive international consortia. The Dallas FBI chief shifted to Miami, so all of this is now getting... When Kissinger kicks in, the Yanks begin to cull a lot of the contenders to be the strongest villains on the globe, and that was all under Nixon's thrall. Yeah, so this is genocide in different continents, in vast continents, and Tricky Dicky Nixon is right at the heart of the strategy making team. What they convicted him of, or what they accused him of, was electoral fraud, which is absolutely trivial. And he gets to die in his bed like the perpetrators of the religious fraud that we heard about the other day. What have we got there? Final products, fluffy white. A lot of the pictures that I've inserted in these have been taken down, and we've just seen that with the video, with the articles that I've released on the what were we talking about yesterday? Oh, now there's a key man, Lucky Luciano. Lucky is a name for one of the gods in the Norse myths. It's the mischievous god that screws people's team's plans up all the time, and this Lucky Luciano is a teamster in American docklands, and what he does is to take the automatic weapons into Italy and into France, and when the troops give up their weapons, having fought for their country and survived, these bastards shoot them down. That's the anti-communist movement. all of the popes, all of the clerics that were involved in the diasporas. That's Pope Pius XII, the man with the canary on his shoulder, the canary joke. I can only find one image on that now, and that image has also been taken down from my website. The image of the Nazi Pope Pius XII with the canary on his shoulder. It's been taken down off my website, but not by me. His accomplice was Archbishop Hudel, who also, like Ratzinger, was allowed to retire into one of those massive Vatican buildings. And you should see his massive mansion in Austria before he entered the war effort. And Austria, like Poland, like France, like Holland, was one of the countries to cave in with very little resistance. The only resistance you've got is the Von Trapp family in the movie, which is a joke about Austria having a navy as a landlocked country, and about the massive religious fraud and the Maria story. Yeah, all of it is hosted near Hitler's birthplace, which is portrayed in the popular jokes as Jesus Christ's birthplace. There is no room at the local inn near there, near Innsbruck. And Beaverbrook damns the whole lot as the head of Allied propaganda. Isn't that clever? You can have a massive belly laugh in a palace or in a parliamentary debating chamber about culling your men in your troops' uniforms by using your treason as a tool, and your mobsters and their vastly potent weaponry that they have now got, and the military police in Britain that are trained in Essex under another Hitchcock, they get their weapons from Germany now, Koch and Company. And everything is twisted, and I think I should stop there now because we're going to run out. But you need to find that page on the Henrik Kruger disclosures to understand exactly what went on in peacetime. We never have peace, because what they do is they bully those little countries and they make them colonial interests and production units. They never give them drinking water, they never give them any health care, and all they get is just a life in poverty. Okay, I'm going to stop, and that is a whole series of keywords on that. So what you need is to look up Henrik Kruger on Professor George Lees's Revelations, and I'll tell you some of the other stories about the Vatican laundering and all of the deals that were struck by the Rothschilds, and I'll tell you the horrible story about what Mr. Bean and the Gallipoli event was about, and the Armenian genocide that followed that. You need to understand that the Governor General, none of the people in the colonies own anything that is in the colonies. All of the genocidal bastards back home in the palace, but mainly in the money laundering sector and money lending sector. That's the Rothschilds. They run the world still. They run the world's medias. Nobody ever gets a chance. And Dave Prentice is on the court of the Bank of England with the Canadian who's a lumberjack, and he's doing okay. I'm going to stop there. It is shameful. It is all just an illicit money stream, and we could have a perfectly capable and civilized and well-funded world if Prince Charles would only come up and say hello to me instead of taking the piss out of the whole world in his greedy scams. He's a decent cove. He talks to the trees. He's a simple man. He likes to have nice loving relationships with his partners. And I can help him out of the dilemma that his family are in, but he will not take the help of an innocent and peaceful man. He relies on the assassination bureaus. It's ever so dangerous for him and his country.